3 o'clock in the morning. The entrance to the port of Narvik, the U.S.S. Gladstone, drifted through the freezing black water on a silent propulsion drive. This was not a routine sweep. 6 hours ago, this channel was clear. Now, 62 Russian naval mines sat anchored in the deep water. In exactly 90 minutes, the British carrier HMS Prince of Wales would begin its transit out to sea. If the Gladstone did not act, the Alliance would lose its flagship before the sun reached the horizon. The air inside the Combat Information Center was cold and smelled of recycled oxygen. The only light came from the blue and green glow of the tactical displays. The crew moved with a quiet, practiced urgency. Every eye was fixed on the sonar screens. The sonar technician spoke into his headset. "Captain, we have multiple contacts. Bottom tethered. High confidence." Commander Robert Vance leaned over the console. His face was etched with fatigue. "Give me a count, specialist." 10, 20, 30. "Sir, the screen is filling up." "They are everywhere." Vance looked at the digital map of the channel. The red dots formed a perfect grid across the narrowest point of the deep water lane. "Verify the signature. I need to know what we are looking at." Signature confirmed. "These are Russian PMK-2 encapsulated torpedo mines. They are active." The news sent a chill through the room. The PMK-2 was not a simple contact mine. It was a sophisticated, autonomous weapon system. It used an acoustic sensor to identify the specific sound of a heavy capital ship. When a target like an aircraft carrier passed overhead, the mine would launch a high-speed torpedo directly into the hull. They were designed to kill ships that thought they were safe. 3:10 in the morning. Outside, the Norwegian coast was a wall of jagged black rock. The Gladstone was a small ship, built of wood and glass-reinforced plastic. It was designed to have a minimal magnetic signature. It was a ghost in the water, but 62 mines were a wall that no ghost could pass through easily. "Communications," Vance said. "Signal the carrier group. Tell them the channel is fouled. They must hold their position." The radio operator shook his head. "Sir, High Command has already denied the request. The Prince of Wales is on a strict departure window. They have a foreign military subsurface threat reported in the North Sea. They need to get that carrier into open water now. They are sailing into a trap," Vance said. "If they enter this channel, they will be at the bottom of the fjord in 10 minutes. 3:15 in the morning. 10 miles to the east, past the territorial limit, a Russian Udaloy-class destroyer sat dead in the water. It was the Admiral Kulikov. It was dark, it was silent, but its sensors were wide open. On its bridge, a Russian captain watched the same patch of water. He knew the Gladstone was there. He knew the carrier was coming. The Russian officer spoke to his executive officer. "The Americans have found them. Will they try to clear them?" the executive officer asked. "They have 80 minutes, the captain replied. "They cannot clear 62 mines in 80 minutes. They will have to choose. They can stay in the harbor and be trapped, or they can try to run the gate and die." Inside the Gladstone, Vance looked at his tactical officer. "We cannot clear them all. Not in time. We have to find a gap. One single lane that is narrow enough for the carrier to squeeze through." "The grid is too tight, sir," the tactical officer replied. "There is no gap." Vance gripped the edge of the table. "Then we make one." The morning was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 3:20 in the morning. The U.S.S. Gladstone slowed to a crawl. The ship was now less than 500 meters from the first row of the minefield. On the sonar display, the 62 contacts were no longer just dots. They were distinct signatures. Each one emitted a faint, rhythmic acoustic pulse. It was the sound of a predator waiting. "Captain," the sonar technician said. His voice was tight. "I am picking up something else. It is not just the mines. I have a high-frequency signal coming from the direction of the Admiral Kulikov." Commander Vance moved to the electronic warfare station. "Is it a jammer?" "No, sir. It is a command link. They are talking to the mines." This changed the calculus immediately. A tethered mine was a passive threat. A mine with a command link was a remote-controlled weapon. The Russians could theoretically tell the mines when to arm when to ignore a specific signature, or when to detonate. The Gladstone was not just facing a wall. They were facing a wall that could think. The ship's intercom crackled. It was the chief engineer. Bridge engineering. We are seeing a massive increase in ambient noise from the hull. The ice is shifting. It is making it harder for the degaussing system to stay balanced. Keep it steady, Chief, Vance said. If our magnetic signature spikes, those mines will wake up. 3:28 in the morning. Inside the Admiral Kulikov, the Russian bridge was a hive of controlled activity. The captain stood by the large windows, looking out at the dark horizon where the Gladstone was hidden by the night. A technician approached him with a tablet. The Americans are holding position, the technician said. They are at the edge of the first line. They are trying to map the grid. Let them map it, the Russian captain replied. They will see that there is no way through. Have the sensor team monitor the HMS Prince of Wales. As soon as her screws begin to turn, I want to know. Sir, if the British carrier enters the channel, the mines will trigger automatically. We will not be able to stop them. The captain turned to look at his officer. That is the point of a gate. It is either open or it is closed. To open it, the British must ask for permission. If they do not, they accept the consequence. 3:35 in the morning. Back on the Gladstone, the radio room received a high-priority flash message. The operator looked up at Vance. Sir, it is from the Prince of Wales, the Carrier Strike Group commander, Admiral Harrison. He is demanding a status update. Vance took the handset. Admiral, this is Commander Vance. We have confirmed 62 Russian PMK-2 mines in the deep water channel. They are command-linked to a Russian destroyer sitting 10 miles out. The channel is impassable. The Admiral's voice came through with a metallic edge. Commander, I have a mission to conduct. I have 4 ships behind me and a schedule to keep. Can you clear a path or not? Not in 40 minutes, Admiral. I need 4 hours to neutralize this many contacts. You do not have 4 hours, Harrison snapped. The Russian submarine threat in the North Sea is moving. If I stay in this harbor, I am a sitting duck. I am beginning my transit in 25 minutes. Clear a hole, Vance. Use whatever you have. The line went dead. Vance looked at the screen. The red dots seemed to mock him. 62 mines, 25 minutes. Tactical, Vance said. Deploy the Sea Fox. Drones. All 4 of them. We are going to try a high-speed neutralize on the center line. We do not have time for finesse. Sir, the tactical officer hesitated. If we miss even one, the carrier is gone. Then do not miss, Vance said. The first drone hit the water with a dull splash. It dove into the black, its camera light cutting a thin path through the silt. As the drone reached 20 meters, the sonar technician shouted, "Captain, the mines! They just changed their frequency. They are not waiting for the carrier anymore." Vance gripped the rail. "What are they doing?" "They are pinging us, sir. The mines are targeting the Gladstone." 3:45 in the morning. Narvik Harbor. The HMS Prince of Wales began its awakening. The sound was a low, subterranean growl that vibrated through the thick steel of the pier and into the frozen ground of the harbor. 2 massive gas turbines spun up to 3,600 revolutions per minute. For the Russian sensors 10 miles away, it was like a lighthouse turning on in a dark room. The acoustic signature of 65,000 tons of warship was unmistakable. Admiral Harrison stood on the flag bridge of the carrier. He watched the digital countdown on the primary flight display. "Status of the Gladstone," he barked. The staff officer checked his console. "They are in the channel, Admiral. They have deployed 4 Sea Fox drones. They are attempting to neutralize the center line. Tell them they have 25 minutes, Harrison said. If the path is not clear, I will have to decide between hitting a mine or sitting here for a Russian cruise missile. I do not like either option." 3:55 in the morning. Inside the U.S.S. Gladstone, the tension was a physical weight. The ship was hovering directly over the first line of the minefield. On the tactical screen, 4 small green icons moved slowly through a field of 62 red dots. These were the Sea Fox drones. They were underwater robots, each carrying a shaped charge explosive. Their mission was to find a mine, lock onto it, and detonate. Drone 1 is in position, the operator said. His hands were steady on the joysticks. Targeting mine number 1. Charging the initiator. Wait, Vance said. Look at the sonar return on the mine. It is moving. The screen showed the red dot shifting. It was not anchored anymore. The PMK-2 mine had released its tether. It was using small thrusters to reposition itself in the water column. It was moving toward the drone. It is hunting the robot, the tactical officer whispered. Detonate now, Vance ordered. A dull thud vibrated through the hull of the Gladstone. A plume of white water erupted 300 meters off the port bow. On the screen, 1 red dot and 1 green icon disappeared. Mine neutralized, the operator reported. But Captain, the others, they are all moving. 4 o'clock in the morning. On the bridge of the Admiral Kulikov, Captain Volkov watched the acoustic data. He saw the explosion on his screen. He did not smile. This was a professional calculation. The Americans are using drones, Volkov said to his staff. Initiate the swarm protocol. Tell the mines to close the gap. The Russian operator typed a command into the encrypted link. 10 miles away, 58 remaining mines received the signal. They began to drift toward the center of the channel. They were closing the hole that the Gladstone was trying to create. It was a dynamic minefield. It was a living organism of high explosives. The British carrier is moving, the operator said. She has cleared the pier. Speed is 5 knots. Volkov nodded. The timing is perfect. They will reach the gate just as it locks. 4:10 in the morning. The Gladstone was now surrounded. To the left and right, the red dots were closing in. The Sea Fox drones were being hunted down one by one. The water was a chaotic mess of sonar pings and acoustic noise. Captain, the sonar technician shouted, I have a new contact. High speed, bearing 090. It is coming from the Russian destroyer. Vance turned. A torpedo? No, sir. It is too small. It is a drone, a Russian underwater vehicle. It is heading straight for us. They are not just blocking the channel, Vance said. They are coming for the Gladstone. They want to remove the only thing that can see the mines. The radio crackled. It was the carrier. Gladstone, this is Prince of Wales. We are entering the outer channel. Speed is 10 knots. Is the lane clear? Over. Vance looked at the screen. The red dots were now a solid wall. Negative, Admiral. The lane is closed. And we are under attack. The Gladstone's engines roared as Vance pushed the throttles forward. He had to move. If he stayed still, he was a target. If he moved, he might trigger the very mines he was trying to destroy. 4:15 in the morning. The edge of the Norwegian territorial sea. The Admiral Kulikov was no longer watching from a distance. The 8,500-ton Russian destroyer increased speed to 20 knots. Its bow cutting through the icy swells as it crossed the 12-mile limit. It was a deliberate provocation. This was a violation of maritime sovereignty. On the bridge of the U.S.S. Gladstone, the radar operator called out the contact change. Captain, the Kulikov has crossed the line. They are inside NATO waters. Commander Vance did not look away from the sonar screen. Bridge to radio. Open a channel on the international hailing frequency. I want to speak. To the Russian commander. A few seconds passed. The static on the bridge speakers cleared. A voice spoke, in accented but perfect English. This is the Admiral Kulikov. You are interfering with a deep-sea navigational exercise. For your own safety, move your vessel to the west. Vance took the handset. Admiral Kulikov. This is Commander Vance of the U.S.S. Gladstone. You have illegally deployed ordnance in a sovereign deep-water channel. You are currently in violation of Norwegian territorial waters. Withdraw immediately, or we will be forced to defend our position. Commander, the Russian voice replied. It was calm, almost bored. The water is cold, the ice is thick, accidents happen in such conditions. We are here to ensure no accidents occur. If you move your ship, there will be peace. If you continue to deploy drones, we will consider it an act of aggression against our research equipment. 4:25 in the morning. Under the water, the Russian drone was closing the distance. It was a sleek, black shape, barely 3 meters long. It was not carrying an explosive. It was carrying a high-powered acoustic jammer. Its mission was to blind the Gladstone. Sonar is losing the grid, the technician shouted. The Russian drone is washing us out. I cannot see the mines anymore. Vance felt the sweat on his palms. He was blind in a graveyard. Tactical. Fire a signal flare. I want the carrier to see exactly where we are. A brilliant white light erupted above the Gladstone, casting long, flickering shadows over the black water. Miles away, the HMS Prince of Wales loomed, like a floating mountain. The carrier was now less than 5 miles from the first line of the minefield. It was a terrifying sight. The massive ship was moving at 12 knots, building momentum that would be impossible to stop quickly. 4:35 in the morning. Inside the Russian destroyer, Captain Volkov watched the flare fade on his monitors. He turned to his tactical officer. The British carrier is not slowing down. They believe the Gladstone can clear the path. Captain, then, we must show them that the Gladstone is irrelevant, Volkov said. Prepare the electronic warfare suite. I want every radio and radar in this fjord jammed. If they cannot talk to each other, they cannot coordinate. Sir, the officer hesitated. That will be seen as a direct kinetic precursor. The gate is closing, Volkov said. Whether they see it or not does not matter. On the Gladstone, the lights on the communication panel turned red. The satellite link dropped. The radio went to static. Vance looked out the bridge window. The carrier was coming. It was huge. It was fast. And it had no idea the mines had moved directly into its path. The carrier is not answering, the radio operator said. We are. Dark. The Gladstone was alone. The wall was invisible. And the clock was running out. 4:40 in the morning. The darkness over the fjord was absolute. The U.S.S. Gladstone was a silent island in a sea of electronic noise. Every screen in the Combat Information Center was a wash of white static. The Russian jamming was total. It was not just the radio. It was the navigation systems. It was the satellite links. The ship was operating on dead reckoning and a single, low-frequency backup sonar. Commander Vance stood on the bridge wing. The wind was biting. It smelled of salt and diesel. Behind him, the massive silhouette of the HMS Prince of Wales was a wall of black steel. The carrier was less than 2 miles away. At its current speed, it would reach the minefield in less than 10 minutes. Signals, Vance called out. Use the blinker light. Signal the carrier in Morse code. Tell them. Minefield has shifted. Lane is closed. Stop engines immediately. A high-intensity white light began to flicker from the top of the Gladstone's mast. It was an ancient way to communicate. In a world of high-tech jamming, it was the only thing left. Short flashes, long flashes. The light cut through the freezing mist. 4:45 in the morning. Inside the Admiral Kulikov, the electronic warfare officer reported the change. Captain, the Americans are using a visual signal. They are attempting to warn the carrier. Block it, Captain Volkov said. Move the ship into their line of sight and arm the forward battery. If that mine hunter moves another meter toward the grid, we will consider it a hostile act. The 8,500-ton destroyer surged forward. It moved between the Gladstone and the carrier, its massive hull acting as a physical shield against the light signal. It was a game of maritime chicken played with thousands of tons of steel. The Russian ship was now less than 400 meters from the Gladstone. 4:50 in the morning. The sound began then. It was a rhythmic, metallic pulse that seemed to vibrate through the very floor of the Gladstone. Ping, ping, ping. It was the Admiral Kulikov's fire control radar. They were painting the Gladstone. They were locking on. "Captain," the tactical officer said. His voice was a whisper. "We have a weapons lock. Their surface-to-surface missiles are active." Vance did not blink. "Maintain our position. We are a sovereign vessel in NATO waters. They will not fire first." "Sir, I have a flash message from Fleet Command via the underwater acoustic link." The operator adjusted his headset. "The orders are clear. Hold the line. Do not initiate combat, but do not allow the carrier to strike those mines." "How am I supposed to do both?" Vance asked. No one answered. The acoustic environment was becoming a nightmare. The sound of the carrier's massive screws was a deafening roar on the sonar. The Russian destroyer's radar pings were a constant hammer. And then there was the third sound, a low, electronic hum coming from the water below. "The mines," the sonar technician said. "They are all active now. They are searching for a hull signature. The Prince of Wales is too loud. They are going to trigger before she even reaches them." 5 o'clock in the morning. The Prince of Wales was now 1 mile from the first row of PMK-2 mines. The carrier's bow wave was a churning mass of white foam. It was a beautiful, terrifying sight. The massive ship was caught between a Russian destroyer ready to fire and an Allied carrier about to sail into a trap. "The carrier is not slowing down," the sonar technician said. "They haven't seen our signal. They think the path is clear." Vance looked at his helmsman. "Hard to starboard. Bring us directly into the path of the carrier." "Sir?" the helmsman gasped. "If they won't stop for the light," Vance said, "they will stop for us. We are going to put the Gladstone between the carrier and the mines. We will be the shield." The Gladstone turned. It was a small ship standing in front of a giant. The Russian destroyer followed the move, its guns tracking the Gladstone's bridge. Beneath the water, 62 mines began to hum with a new, aggressive energy. They were no longer just waiting. They were waking up. 5:10 in the morning. The U.S.S. Gladstone was a toy boat in the path of a mountain. Behind them, the HMS Prince of Wales loomed as a wall of gray steel. The carrier was 65,000 tons of momentum, moving at 12 knots. It did not slow down. Commander Vance stood on the bridge wing. He looked back at the giant. "Signal them again. Flash. Fast. Emergency stop." The blinker lights screamed into the dark. Short. Short. Long. The Gladstone was now directly between the carrier's bow and the first row of the minefield. 5:11 in the morning. Inside the Admiral Kulikov, the alarms changed pitch. "Captain, the American ship is directly in the path of the carrier. They are going to collide." Captain Volkov gripped the bridge rail. "The British will turn. They have to." "Sir, the British carrier is still accelerating. They are at 13 knots." Volkov turned to his tactical officer. "Launch the helicopter. Tell the pilot to hover over the Gladstone. If they deploy a BLET, single mine-clearing charge, he is to engage with depth charges. No warnings." 5:12 in the morning. The roar of a Russian K-27 helicopter filled the air. It rose from the back of the Kulikov like a giant, dark insect. It swept across the water, staying low to avoid the wind. It hovered 50 feet above the Gladstone. The downwash from its twin rotors whipped the freezing sea spray into a blinding white frenzy. 5:13 in the morning. Inside the Gladstone, the sound was deafening. The plastic hull of the ship shook under the pressure of the helicopter's rotors. "Captain, weapons lock," the tactical officer yelled. "The Kulikov has a firing solution on our engine room. The helicopter has a lock on our forward deck. They are ready to fire." Vance looked up through the bridge glass. He could see the Russian pilot. They were eye to eye. The pilot was wearing a dark visor. He did not move. 5:14 in the morning. The Prince of Wales was 500 meters away. The carrier's horn sounded again. It was a deep, rhythmic thrumming that felt like it was breaking ribs. The sound bounced off the cliffs of the fjord and returned as a distorted ghost. "They see us," the helmsman whispered. "They are not stopping," Vance said. His voice was flat. "They cannot stop. Not in this distance. They are going to run us over." 5:15 in the morning. The first row of mines was now directly beneath the Gladstone. The sonar technician began to count. His voice was a monotone. Mine 1, active. Mine 2, active. Mine 3, targeting. The mines were no longer just waiting. Their internal torpedoes were spinning up to speed. The sound was a high-pitched, mechanical whine. It was audible through the Gladstone's hull. The minefield was preparing to fire its first volley. 5:16 in the morning. On the Russian destroyer, the fire control officer put his hand on the launch button. Target is locked. Permission to engage. Volkov looked at the carrier. It was almost on top of the Gladstone. The scale of the disaster was now inevitable. A collision would trigger the mines. The mines would sink the carrier. The carrier would crush the Gladstone. Wait, Volkov said. 5:17 in the morning. The Gladstone was caught in a vice of steel and physics. A Russian destroyer to the east, a Russian helicopter above, a British carrier to the west, and 62 torpedo mines below. Vance picked up the radio handset. He did not use the encrypted line. He used the open, international channel. Prince of Wales. Gladstone. If you do not turn now, we will all die. Turn port. Now. For the love of God, turn. 5:18 in the morning. The carrier's massive bow began to swing. It was slow. It was heavy. But the white foam at its front shifted. The Prince of Wales was attempting a crash turn. 5:19 in the morning. The Russian helicopter dipped its nose. It was preparing to drop its payload. Captain, the Gladstone's tactical officer said, "We have incoming." The helicopter is opening its weapons bay. 5:20 in the morning. Every weapon was aimed. Every heart was hammering. The world was 1 second away from a flash of orange light. 5:26 in the morning. The ocean beneath the U.S.S. Gladstone changed. It was not a sound. It was a physical pressure. The sonar screens in the Combat Information Center did not show static. They showed a perfect, synchronous pulse. The sonar technician ripped his headset off. Every one of the 62 Russian mines emitted a high-frequency scream at the exact same millisecond. Captain, the acoustic signature just spiked. It is off the charts. They are all live arming. Now, the Russian command link? Vance shouted over the roar of the helicopter above. It is gone, sir. The Kulikov lost control. The mines are not following Russian protocols anymore. They are in a failed deadly loop. 5:27 in the morning. Inside the Admiral Kulikov, the bridge was in chaos. The electronic warfare consoles were flashing red. The Russian captain stood frozen as his screens went dark. The operator's voice was panicked. "Captain, the command link is hijacked. Someone or something is broadcasting an override signal from inside the harbor. The mines are no longer responding to our abort codes." Volkov looked at the Gladstone, then at the British carrier. The mines were now a hair-trigger trap that neither side could disarm. If a single propeller turned too fast, the entire channel would erupt. "The helicopter," Volkov ordered. "Tell him to break off. If he stays there, the acoustic resonance will trigger the first row." 5:28 in the morning. The Russian helicopter suddenly veered away. It climbed hard into the dark sky, its landing lights fading into the mist. On the Gladstone, the silence that followed was even more terrifying. The water was still, but the sonar display showed the 62 red dots vibrating. They were seeking. They were no longer waiting for a specific signature. They were looking for any movement at all. "The Prince of Wales is still turning," the helmsman whispered. "They have too much mass," Vance said. "If they keep swinging their stern, they will drift right over the center cluster." Then, the water 100 meters from the Gladstone's bow began to boil. It was not an explosion. It was a massive release of compressed air. "Mine 42 has breached its casing," the technician said. "Sir, they are not just arming, they are malfunctioning. The entire grid is going unstable." The pivot had arrived. The Russian weapon was no longer a tool of the Kremlin. It was a ghost in the machine. Both commanders realized the same truth at the same moment. The enemy was no longer each other. The enemy was the water itself. 5:30 in the morning. The Admiral Kulikov did not wait for a formal de-escalation. The massive Russian destroyer suddenly surged into a hard reverse. Its twin screws churned the water into a violent, frothing wake as it backed away from the minefield. It was a retreat born of professional fear. The Russians knew their own weapons. They knew that a PMK-2 mine in a failed deadly loop did not distinguish between a NATO hull and a Russian one. "Captain," the sonar technician called out. "The Kulikov is hauling mail. They are putting distance between themselves and the grid as fast as they can." Commander Vance stayed at the glass. He watched the Russian ship shrink into the morning mist. They are running because they lost the key to the lock. If those mines are truly autonomous now, the Kulikov is just another target. 5:35 in the morning. The situation inside the Combat Information Center was a mix of technical confusion and raw adrenaline. The electronic warfare officer hammered at his keyboard. "I am tracking the override signal, sir. It is not coming from the shore. It is not coming from the harbor. It is an internal logic error. The mines are slave to each other in a mesh network. One malfunctioned. It told the others the engagement had begun. It is a digital wildfire." "Can we jam the mesh?" Vance asked. "Negative. If we jam it, we might trigger the anti-tamper sensors. These things are designed to explode if they lose the network signal. We are in a stalemate with 62 suicidal robots." 5:40 in the morning. The HMS Prince of Wales had finally arrested its forward motion. The massive carrier sat dead in the water, less than 800 meters from the nearest mine. Its giant propellers had stopped turning. The silence that followed was heavy. Without the roar of the carrier's engines, the sound of the fjord returned. The cracking of ice, the distant whine of the Russian helicopter, and the low, rhythmic ticking of 62 weapons beneath the surface. The radio operator looked up. "Sir, the Admiral Kulikov is hailing us on the open channel. It is the captain." Vance took the handset. "This is Vance. Go ahead." The voice of Captain Volkov was no longer bored. It was tight. It was the voice of a man staring at a catastrophe he had authored. "Commander, we have a technical emergency. The grid is unresponsive to our abort codes. The arming sequence is irreversible from our position. You must move the carrier. If the acoustic pressure remains at this level, the seismic triggers will trip in less than 20 minutes. I cannot move the carrier, Captain," Vance said. "The moment she clears her baffles and increases speed, your mines will track her signature. You put these things in our house. You tell me how to turn them off." There was a long pause. Only static filled the bridge. "We cannot," Volkov finally replied. "The logic gate is locked, but there is a secondary acoustic bypass. It was designed for maintenance. If a ship can broad pulse a specific frequency at close range, the mines will enter a diagnostic mode. They will stay silent for 10 minutes. 5:45 in the morning. Vance looked at his tactical screen. To broad pulse the frequency, a ship had to be within 50 meters of the mine. It had to sit directly on top of the explosives. The Gladstone was the only ship small enough to do it. But it was a suicide mission. "We have to do it," Vance said. "Sir," the tactical officer whispered, "if we sit on top of 62 PMK-2s and they go off, there won't be enough of the Gladstone left to fill a bucket. If we don't," Vance said, "the carrier dies, the alliance breaks, and the war starts before breakfast. Navigator, bring us to the center of the grid." Steady as she goes, the Gladstone began to creep forward. It was moving into the heart of the Iron Gate. Both sides watched. Both sides held their breath. 5:50 in the morning. The U.S.S. Gladstone was now a stationary target in the center of the grid. It sat directly above the densest cluster of Russian mines. The water below was no longer just a physical space. It was a digital battlefield. The ship's transducers were pushed to their maximum output. They were broadcasting a complex, multi-tonal frequency provided by the Admiral Kulikov. "Bypass signal is active," the tactical officer reported. "We are flooding the zone." On the sonar screen, The 62 red dots stopped vibrating. The 62 red dots stopped vibrating. The high-pitched scream of the mines faded into a low, rhythmic thumping. It sounded like a collective heartbeat. "They are in diagnostic mode," the technician said, "but the buffer is unstable. The mines are trying to re-authenticate the signal every 60 seconds. We are holding the door open, but the hinges are weak." 6 o'clock in the morning. While the Gladstone held its breath in the fjord, the world above was moving at a different speed. In a hardened bunker in Norway, the NATO North Task Force commander picked up a secure line. At the same moment, in the headquarters of the Russian Northern Fleet in Severomorsk, a high-ranking admiral did the same. The conversation was brief. It was stripped of all political rhetoric. Two professionals were looking at a map of a narrow channel. The Russian admiral spoke first. "The grid is a failure. We recognize the instability. We will not interfere with the extraction of your vessel. However, our destroyer will remain in the area to observe the neutralization of our equipment." The NATO commander replied, "The Prince of Wales will transit now. If the Admiral Kulikov closes within 5 miles of the carrier, we will consider the diagnostic mode a deception. My submarines have orders to engage. Do we have an understanding?" "We have an understanding," the Russian replied. "Tell your minehunter to keep the pulse steady. If they drop the frequency, the gate will close forever." 6:15 in the morning. On the bridge of the HMS Prince of Wales, Admiral Harrison looked at the small light of the Gladstone in the distance. He turned to his navigator. "Engage the electric drives. Minimum wake. We are going through the center." The 65,000-ton carrier began to move. It was a slow, agonizing crawl. It felt like walking through a room full of glass on tiptoe. Inside the Gladstone, Commander Vance watched the massive shadow. Commander Vance watched the massive shadow of the carrier approach on the sonar. "She is coming in. 500 meters. 400 meters. The Gladstone's hull groaned under the acoustic pressure of the broadcast. The ship was a beacon of noise in a world that demanded silence. "The mines are shifting," the sonar technician whispered. "Mine 12 is trying to wake up. It is sensing the carrier's displacement." "Increase the pulse power," Vance ordered. "Another 5%. "Sir, if we go higher, we will burn out the transducers." "Burn them out then," Vance said. "We have 10 minutes to stay alive. After that, it does not matter." The carrier's bow passed the Gladstone's stern. The two ships were so close that the carrier's wake rocked the smaller vessel. The wall of steel blocked out the horizon. Beneath them, the 62 mines waited. Their clocks were ticking. The diagnostic window was closing. 6:30 in the morning. The stern of the HMS Prince of Wales finally cleared the last row of the grid. The massive carrier did not slow down to offer a salute. It could not afford the luxury. It increased speed to 18 knots, its 4 massive propellers churning the water into a violent white scar that stretched back toward the harbor. The flagship was safe. It was moving into the deep water of the Norwegian Sea, leaving the U.S.S. Gladstone alone in the center of the minefield. Commander Vance watched the carrier's radar return grow smaller. "Signal the carrier group. Wish them a safe transit. Then, get me a status on our transducers." "Sir, they are melting," the tactical officer replied. "The heat sinks are at 95% capacity. We cannot hold the diagnostic pulse for more than another 3 minutes." 6:38 in the morning. The radio crackled. It was the international hailing frequency again. It was Captain Volkov from the Admiral Kulikov. "Commander Vance, the primary target has departed the engagement zone. The objective of our exercise is complete. We are now transmitting the deep cycle scuttle command." Vance wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Confirm when the command is sent, Captain." "Command is sent," Volkov replied. "In 30 seconds, the channel will be clear. We are withdrawing to international waters. I suggest you do the same." 6:45 in the morning. On the sonar screen, the red dots began to change. One by one, the signatures of the 62 mines began to descend. They did not explode. They did not drift. They simply fell. They dropped through the water column and settled into the thick, freezing silt of the fjord floor. They were still there, hidden in the dark, but they were no longer alive. The sensors were dark. The torpedoes were locked. "Grid is clear," the sonar technician whispered. He sounded like he had forgotten how to breathe. "The water is empty, sir." 6:55 in the morning. The Admiral Kulikov turned its massive hull toward the east. It did not linger. The Russian destroyer picked up speed, its radar signatures fading as it moved back toward the 12-mile limit. There were no parting words. There was no victory. It was a professional withdrawal after a mission that had spiraled out of control. Inside the Gladstone, the crew sat in the dim blue light of the Combat Information Center. No one cheered. There was no celebration. The silence was heavy with the realization of how close they had come to the end of the world. "Helmsman," Vance said. His voice was hoarse.
Yes, sir.
"Bring us about." "Course 270. Let us get out of this hole." 7 o'clock in the morning. The sun began to crest the jagged peaks of the Norwegian mountains. It was a cold, pale light that turned the water of the fjord into a sheet of polished lead. The Gladstone moved slowly toward the open sea, passing the spot where the mines had sat just an hour before. The ship was silent. The only sound was the hum of the cooling fans trying to save the scorched electronics. Vance stood on the bridge wing and watched the horizon. To the west, the Prince of Wales was a tiny speck of gray. To the east, the Admiral Kulikov was gone. "Captain," the radio operator said, "Fleet Command is asking for a full incident report. They want to know who gave the order to move the Gladstone into the path of the carrier." Vance looked at the empty water. "Tell them I did, and tell them the channel is open. For now." The crisis was over. The morning was finally still, but the map of the world had changed in the dark. 12 hours later, the port of Narvik, the U.S.S. Gladstone, sat at a quiet corner of the naval pier. The ship looked unchanged from the outside, but inside, it was a hollowed-out shell of a warship. Technical teams from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization moved through the passageways with portable scanners and diagnostic tablets. They were not looking for structural damage. They were looking for the digital fingerprints of a ghost. In the Combat Information Center, the air was still heavy with the scent of ozone. The primary transducers, the voice of the ship, were black, twisted slag. They had been pushed beyond their physical limits to hold the diagnostic pulse. They were the price of the carrier's safety. Commander Vance stood on the pier, watching a team of divers emerge from the freezing water. They carried small, high-definition cameras. They had been down in the silt, photographing the 62 Russian mines that now lay dormant on the harbor floor. "Captain," one of the divers said, shaking the ice from his suit. "We found something on mine number 38. It was not just a faulty tether. There was a secondary receiver welded to the casing. It was not Russian standard issue." Vance looked at the digital photos. The device was small, no larger than a brick, and covered in a specialized acoustic foam. "A relay?" "An override, sir." It was designed to listen for our specific mine-clearing frequencies and then broadcast a trigger signal. It was a trap built inside a trap. If we had tried to use standard acoustic pulses to neutralize them, they would have fired instantly. 2 days later, the Pentagon, Washington. The incident was now officially classified as the Iron Gate. In a windowless briefing room, senior analysts gathered to review the telemetry from the Gladstone and the HMS Prince of Wales. The mood was not one of victory. It was one of profound concern. A senior intelligence officer pointed to a map of the fjord. "The Russians are calling it a navigational exercise gone wrong. They have officially apologized for the technical malfunction of their equipment. But the data tells a different story." This was a proof of concept. They wanted to see if they could shut down a Tier 1 naval port without firing a single shot. And they succeeded, a general replied. If the Gladstone had not been in the right place at the right time, that carrier strike group would be trapped in the harbor or sitting at the bottom of the sea. They proved they can create a dynamic, autonomous blockade in under 6 hours. 3 days later, the North Sea, the HMS Prince of Wales continued its transit toward the Arctic Circle. It was surrounded by a screen of destroyers and frigates, its radar eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the Russian Northern Fleet. The carrier was safe, But the tactical reality of the North Atlantic had shifted. Inside the Gladstone, now under tow back to a major shipyard. For repairs, the crew began the long process of writing their after-action reports. They were tired. They were quiet. They knew that the silence of the fjord had been a lie. The Russian destroyer, the Admiral Kulikov, was back at its home port in Severomorsk. No medals were handed out. No announcements were made. But in the offices of the Russian Naval Intelligence, a new file was opened. It was labeled the Narvik response. It contained the acoustic signature of every NATO vessel that had participated in the crisis. The first phase of the engagement was over. The strategic autopsy was just beginning. The world had seen the gate close. Now, it had to figure out how to keep it open. 3 days later, the Norwegian Ministry of Defense. The fjord was quiet once again. The surface of the water was a sheet of polished glass, reflecting the cold, blue light of the Arctic sun. On the surface, it looked as if nothing had happened, but beneath the waves, the 62 Russian mines remained in the silt. They were a permanent part of the geography now. They were a reminder of how quickly the world could change between 3 in the morning and dawn. In a secure briefing room in Oslo, military analysts from across the alliance gathered for the final strategic assessment. The Iron Gate incident was no longer a tactical problem. It was now a case study in modern brinkmanship. The lead analyst stood before a digital map of the channel. The Russian objective was not to sink the HMS Prince of Wales. If they wanted to destroy the carrier, they would have used a submarine or a long-range cruise missile. The objective was to prove that a NATO port could be rendered useless in a matter of hours. They used the mines as a physical manifestation of a digital blockade. The analysis was chilling. The PMK-2 mines were discovered to be running a specialized software package that had never been seen before. It allowed the weapons to operate as a cohesive, intelligent network. When the U.S.S. Gladstone entered the field, the mines did not just wait. They communicated. They shared data. They adapted their positions in real time. It was a demonstration of a new kind of warfare, where the weapon is as smart as the soldier who deployed it. Strategic experts would later agree that the crisis was a test of a different kind. It was a test of the rules of engagement. By placing the mines in NATO territorial waters, the Russians were betting that the alliance would hesitate. They were betting that the risk of a full-scale war would outweigh the need to move the carrier. They were right. One officer remarked during the briefing, "We did hesitate." But they did not account for the Gladstone. The final assessment focused on the decision-making of the two commanders on the scene. Commander Vance and Captain Volkov had found themselves in a situation that their respective headquarters could not solve. For 30 minutes, the fate of the North Atlantic rested on the professional restraint of two men who were supposed to be enemies. When the minefield began to malfunction, Volkov chose to provide the bypass codes, rather than watch a catastrophe unfold. When the carrier refused to stop, Vance chose to put his own ship in the path of a giant. These were not the actions of machines or algorithms. They were the actions of human beings who understood the weight of the trigger. No medals were awarded for the Iron Gate incident. The details of the bypass codes and the malfunctioning mesh network were buried in classified files. The public would only hear about a minor navigational delay caused by technical issues during a routine exercise. The U.S.S. Gladstone was eventually repaired. The HMS Prince of Wales completed its mission in the North Sea. The Admiral Kulikov returned to its patrols in the Barents Sea. On the surface, the status quo was restored. But the lesson of the Iron Gate remained. Modern warfare is no longer defined by the size of a fleet or the power of a missile. It is defined by the narrow spaces where technology and human decision-making collide. The difference between a peaceful morning and a global conflict was not a treaty or a boundary line. It was 60 seconds of restraint. In a freezing fjord, the world remained at peace, not because the weapons were silent, but because the men behind them chose not to fire. The Iron Gate was open, but everyone knew that somewhere in another dark channel, another gate was already being prepared.